Living with ADHD can be a challenge, and dating with ADHD is definitely a challenge, we've heard many of you say. But finding the right care and proper tools needed to succeed can be life-changing. Done is an online ADHD care platform that can get you all the resources you need to help manage your ADHD. Online visits, refills, and a 24/7 care team made for you. In just 1 minute, Done's online assessment can help kickstart your ADHD treatment journey. With experienced clinicians, worry-fill refills, and online visits, you can start getting personalized care as soon as today or tomorrow. So contact an expert team that can help you around the clock and get a personalized treatment plan just for you. Here's how you do it. Take a free 1-minute assessment and book an appointment with a licensed ADHD clinician as soon as the next day. Get continuous care, one-click refills, insurance coverage, and 24/7 care team support with Done for just $79 a month, and pharmacy copays as low as $0. Visit get.donefirst.com/podcast to learn more. That's get.donefirst.com/podcast to learn more. Done. Turn ADHD into your strength.
I was so excited to get my shipment from Last Bottle Wines in the mail the other day, full of incredible red wines, all from Napa Valley. I love wine tasting, so having this to my door couldn't be happier. Also, couldn't be more excited that today's episode is brought to you by Last Bottle Wines. If you don't know already, they're a Napa-based online wine shop with a twist. They offer just one handpicked wine per day until it sells out, and they're always at incredible prices. We're talking 30 to 70% off retail. And the best part is that there's no subscriptions, no fees, and no minimum purchase. And I could not be more excited to bring this offer right now because they're having a marathon sale, which is coming up March 28th and 29th. Even better, we're offering Dateable listeners 10% off your first order with code DATEABLE. So if you are a wine lover like me, this is a great time to join. And did I mention that shipping is 100% free? So what are you waiting for? Mark your calendar for March 28th and 29th, or get on it earlier if you want. You can sign up at lastbottlewines.com and use code DATEABLE and find out why Last Bottle is the most fun way to discover and buy amazing wine.
The Dateable podcast features real stories from real people of how they make modern dating work or not. Each episode will not only offer you a new perspective on dating, but will also change the way you date. I'm your host, Yue, former dating coach turned dating sociologist. You'll also hear commentary from my producer, Julie Krafchick, and other surprise co-hosts. SF listeners, come hang and mingle with the Dateable crew and your favorite past guests from 6 to 8 p.m. on Thursday, May 23rd. We're teaming up with 941 Social Club, where you can join the rest of the party afterwards if you like and get up to 10 free drinks at 10 bars. Come join us for happy hour at one bar or go to the whole crawl. The choice is yours. Use the code DATEABLE for $15 tickets, and so we can tell you where we'll be meeting. Visit our Facebook page for the event or go to dateablepodcast.com/Polk Street Pub Crawl and use the code DATEABLE. That's spelled DATEABLE. Now back to the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating. Our topic today is about race, but also about this term that I've never really heard of before, sexual racism. In season 7, we did an episode called Dating as a Black Woman, where we had 2 guests talk about the struggles of dating as a Black woman in modern times. And we discussed the extremes of racial discrimination and fetishism. And after this episode aired, Chris, our guest, wrote in and said the following. First, I just want everyone to hear our studio guest, his voice. His name's Chris. Hi. Chris. As a Black gay man who's dated in both the Bay Area and the East Coast, Philadelphia and Florida mostly, I found that my race has greatly complicated my romantic life. One of my first Tinder matches ever said, "I'm sorry, but I don't find African Americans attractive." So, with that intro, his name is Chris. He's 26 years old, hails from Berkeley, California. He's been there for 3 years, originally from Florida. He's currently single and actively going on dates, and definitely not dating that guy.
No, definitely not.
So you introduced us to this term called sexual racism. Can you expand more on that?
Yeah. Yeah, sexual racism is just a term sort of to define the phenomenon where people know that racism is wrong, right? They're all about that. But when it comes to sort of dating and sex, they say they have certain preferences on certain like races. So you're cute, but I'm not really into black guys, or like I don't think Asian guys are that attractive, and they think that's not racist because it's just a preference. Like I can't change it.
Yeah, it's like saying like, I like brunettes versus blondes.
Yeah, exactly. And except brunettes aren't a historically like
marginalized
underrepresented
group,
right?
group.
Exactly.
Yeah. So applying sort of that logic to race, I think that's what sort of the term sexual racism.
Now, I've only been on Grindr maybe like a handful of times.
It's not really for you.
I got no action.
Did you have a fake profile?
I have a fake profile. But what I did find it to be very different from like Tinder or a Bumble is that people are very blunt about certain things. For example, if they're HIV positive, or which position, are they a top or a bottom? So I've seen a lot of people say, I prefer this race, but I haven't seen what you've described in your email to us, a list of ethnicities that they would not consider. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I feel like it's been less prevalent in the past couple of years just because it's been publicized a lot. There are actually like websites like Douchebags of Grindr who have just a bunch of screenshots of douchebags on Grindr, like and all their but yeah, there used to be stuff like, and I've seen this with Asian men. There was a squinty eye, no reply. It rhymes.
What?
And then no blacks, no femmes, no Asians is a very common.
What's a femme?
Feminine.
Like a feminine guy.
Guys, yeah. So,
like
so yeah, that's a lot. That's a whole other thing. But like, it's like
Shit.
mask for mask, like no femmes, that sort of thing.
That is
but yeah.
so blunt.
Yeah. And it's not the majority of profiles, but it's enough that as a person of color, you scroll through and you start seeing them, and it's like, okay, so I will.
Have you ever seen anything
No,
like that on
I was
that?
going to ask you. I've never seen that on Tinder.
I've only seen the preference part.
Yeah,
but I've never read the opposite of that.
Right, like none of that. No.
What are we, like in the 1930s? Like what are we?
No, it's a little regressive, but again, people think it's okay because it's a sexual preference, and that preferences in that arena are completely siloed away.
Well, I remember like back in the day, I don't think Match actually does this anymore, but they used to. They used to ask like which races you preferred.
Yeah.
So it kind of like set you up for that. But actually, I've noticed now that they don't have that anymore, which is probably good.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've had people like me like yelling about it for a few years. So like it has gotten better. It's not completely eliminated though.
Like some of the things you've said, I'm just in shock here. You started developing feelings for a friend of yours, and he said when he was drunk, there was a racial totem pole, and blacks in the second lowest position, only above Asians.
Yeah.
And you've had other people tell you, sorry, it's just a preference. But then you've also experienced the opposite side of this, where you become like someone's first black guy, or they fetishize you.
Yeah, yeah.
What is that like?
Yeah, so it's really this weird sort of dichotomy. So I'm like, at one end, don't talk to me. There's no chance here, not into black guys. But then on the other end, there's this, weird fetishization, like a lot of stereotypes about black guys. BBC, big black cock, is a normal thing for people to say. And so that's the number one thing I get. So like a lot of Grindr sort of messages will be like, oh, how big are you? Let me see that BBC, like that sort of thing. And then
but is that just Grindr messages in general? Like
there are a lot of Grindr messages
a lot
like
of
let
words
me see.
and less emojis than I thought there would be.
It's obviously taken to a different level, but I assume probably people are as blunt all the time.
No, they're definitely blunt, but then they're blunt about like how much they're into sort of black guys. Like one guy, I actually called him out on it. Like I said, I don't like to be fetishized, but like I was still gonna talk to him. He was like hot or whatever, and then he says
he was hot or whatever. I think I said whatever. I'm just gonna call you out.
But then he said, it's not a fetish. Like, I can't even come without a black guy in the room. And I said, you don't know what the word fetish means then, because like that's
That's the
That's the definition of
a
fetish.
fetish.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
You've also gotten comments like, you look like a Greek god made out of chocolate.
that one was kind of nice compared to
That is actually kind of nice.
You know.
Yeah, sounds
I'll take that
delicious.
one.
Yeah, and you're Greek, a Greek god made out of chocolate. I love how full your lips are. Show me that, BBC. Okay, yeah, great. All openers you've gotten on dating apps.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, Grindr is just a lot more fascinating, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because we had Yelitsa and
Sophia.
Sophia, who is the two guests we had that you wrote in about, and they basically said that they got a lot of these comments too on online dating from a straight female's perspective. And they also kind of felt that like extreme of either not into it at all or like fetishizing
Super
it.
into it, yeah.
Do you get comments similar to other black men?
I'll say, something that let me show that BBC or some message, and no other black person is like surprised by that.
Right.
So this seems to be sort of a general phenomenon. I haven't talked to another gay black person or another black person, period, who hasn't felt like either they were discounted or fetishized.
But
With
straight
race.
black men too. You
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
to? Yeah.
So how do you date then?
You find the minority sort of people that A, you're attracted to, and B, don't say stuff like that. And so it narrows the pool a lot. It's a lot harder. I think I've had fewer, relationships than someone my age who's active on the apps.
Do you feel like there's a lot of, because you mentioned the two polar opposites, like do you feel like there's people that are in that middle ground?
Yeah, so there are people in that middle ground, and I have met them, and I've dated some of them. I find often people, even in that middle ground, they'll have more sort of subtle things going on. A lot of guys I've dated, I look through their Facebook at all their exes, and they happen to be black guys. I was like, that's interesting. Or they'll be like weirdly into black culture. Like this one guy I used to date, like anytime I went over to his place, he'd be watching Kevin Hart. And I was like, Kevin Hart's like funny, but like not that funny that you need to be watching him all the time.
Got
so
it.
yeah, so I feel like some of those people in the middle maybe aren't, as explicit about it and don't, say offensive things, but they might, harbor some sort of fetishization
Or they might not even acknowledge it or,
Exactly.
or be aware
Even
of
know,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, because that's what I find with yellow fever. I mean, like, you can't be watching Ali Wong all the time,
Exactly.
right? She's not that funny.
Yeah.
But
Have you
love her.
encountered anyone that like wasn't like that just like was like dated all types of races and you were just one of many
One or two.
on
Yes,
your
but-
hands? You
Yes,
counted.
I can count them on my hands.
Got it.
So you also have a preference for who you date.
Yeah, and
And what is that?
that's one of those things that, I was disparaging people for have racial preferences. But then one time I was like texting one of my friends about this new guy I was dating. She's like, wait, let me guess. He's 5'8", he's white, and he works in tech. And I was like, that's right. So yeah, I feel like I tend to gravitate towards white guys more. I am genuinely attracted to all sort of types of people, and I have dated all types of people. But if you want to count the frequency, I date white guys a lot.
So what are your opening lines? Like, I love marshmallow.
Yeah, I love some white chocolate. No.
Like, read some code to me.
No. Yeah.
Some code.
No, my opening line usually has something to do with their profile because,
Because you're a normal human
yeah.
being. Yeah.
So then I would say, hey, isn't that a preference or is that a fetish?
It is a preference, and it's just as wrong as, the people who say they don't want to date black guys. Yeah, I think it's one of those things, like, because, black people, we, have all the same media growing up. And I think whatever sort of forces that made white guys think like that are also operating on me. Yeah.
Got it. Do you think, though, it's just because of the people you encounter, or do you think it's like you're actively seeking out white men?
I think it can be who I encounter just because, I'm a scientist. I'm in grad school. I traverse in a lot of spaces that, there aren't that many people of color. But then also, like, when I'm on the apps, I look through my Tinder matches and 90% of them are white. There has to be some selection there.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
what's available.
Yeah.
You do say in your message to us that you've internalized some of this sexual racism as well, and you're finding it difficult to reprogram your sexual desires. Have you dated other black men?
I have slept with other black men. I haven't dated.
And what stopped you from dating black men?
I think it's a prevalence thing. So, again, in the spaces that I traverse around, and especially in the LGBT community, I find relatively there aren't that many gay black men, even gay Latino men. Yeah, as far as, people that I've been interested in, most people I want to date don't want to date me. So I think just as a rule of sort of probability. I think it's like, as far as people I, actually date, it just ends up not being a black man. No black man has asked to date me, and I said, no, I'm not into black guys. But like, it's just
the opportunity hasn't really
yeah.
presented itself.
I know you've lived on the East Coast and the West Coast. Have you seen any differences between the two areas? Or three, because I guess you lived in two places on the East Coast.
Yeah, so I lived in Florida and then Philadelphia during college. All of the same issues sort of apply. I feel like in the East Coast cities, there does seem to be a bit more mixing going on. So I would it would be more likely for me to find those people who would never say something like that. Whereas on the West Coast, it's like everyone is very, socially conscious and liberal and everything. But there's actually, I feel like there's less sort of mixing of different races and certain.
Interesting.
Yeah. SF is a pretty diverse city, but like if I go walk down Powell Street, the people, working in those buildings will be a certain type of person.
You know what's interesting? Because I feel differently because I'm from the East Coast originally, and I feel like I very rarely see interracial couples as much as here. However, I don't think there's nearly as many African American Black people here. So maybe it's like because of from that point of view, like there's a lot of Asian, Indian, like other races and ethnicities.
Yeah, definitely.
This is so crazy because I'm still hung up on this Grindr aspect of the messages. I feel like we live in San Francisco, okay, a large gay community,
right,
and a very politically driven, always protesting, fighting for certain rights. This is the last thing I would expect from a already marginalized groups that's been fighting for their rights for so many years. It just really surprises me that people do not see this as the same as the other sort of discrimination, right?
It's a really good point, because it's not like just like the standard heterosexual white guy, right?
Yeah.
That's like been entitled his whole life. It's a very different group that has fought for things.
Exactly. They've been marginalized and they've been fighting for their rights. And why are straight men more woke about the subject? I use that word. I've been wanting to so much. Do I get millennial cred now? Why is that? Because you would never find this on like a straight dating app or website. Even if people are thinking it, they would never write it on there.
So I think about that a lot, actually, because I actually don't think that straight people are more woke. That's like probably not a thing. I think straight people don't find the need to vocalize those preferences just because they have more choices and like so many different ways of meeting people and dating. I also think in the gay community, there's this certain sort of frankness that comes with, especially with like the Grindr. So like you want to say how many inches you want your dude to be, you might as well throw in that like what race.
I could see that because like I feel like on Tinder, for example, men will say like sexual comments to women and then it won't be responded. So I'm just thinking of two men just like where it's like socially acceptable to just say this stuff. And like you said, like if you're already throwing out all this, why not add one more? And then like a lot of the points, like I know like the BBC is specific to Black men, but like everything else up until then, like how many inches are you, etc. It's like probably they're sending that to anyone. Right. But why isn't Grindr making this, not okay? I feel like comments like this would be taken down on other sites.
Yeah, so Grindr actually they have a couple of initiatives where they're trying to actually sort of fix this. So they I don't remember the names of the exact campaigns, but I know they started a magazine called Into that has a bunch of articles about this. But yeah, as far as policing content, Grindr doesn't like really do that much. They look for people.
It would take forever.
They would have to look through a lot of
red flags.
Mostly they want to weed out like advertising and like people trying to scam people. But like
also like what would be offensive? Does this penis offend you?
Exactly.
Right. What about this one?
If Grindr took down everything offensive, there wouldn't be Grindr.
Just not happen anymore. It's interesting because like I would love to hear your opinion of just like media portrayal of the Black male, because we talked about this quite a bit on our last episode about the Black female. And there were a lot of stereotypes that they brought up. Yalitza and Sophia, our guests, like talking about like this angry Black woman.
Hard to deal with. Like if Black black men wouldn't date them. Who else would?
Yeah. And like the trophy of the white woman they
Mhm.
talked about.
And the skin color too.
Yeah.
It's the
There's colorism.
there is so much colorism within the black community as well. They were saying that someone made a comment like you're light skinned and that's a good thing.
Right.
I mean, it's the same thing in the Asian community too. It's better to be light skinned and fair.
Yeah.
So what are some of those that you've seen in media?
Yeah, as far as a sort of portrayal of black men generally in media, I think there's actually a long history of that. You know, current media often has the black guy as strong and like sort of very sexually forward, very aggressive. I find that people sort of expect that from me. And then, if you go back to in the early 1900s with all these films where you would have the Sambo character, like just the big brute with like lots of physical strength but no sort of mental acumen. I feel like that's kind of just the stereotypical black man. It's been, sort of refined for the modern age. But yeah, it's really hard to find black men in media engaging in romance the same way you would see a white man doing. Like, I just saw the movie last week, If Beale Street Could Talk, and it's just like a very romantic movie about two black people. And I realized I hadn't seen long shots of a black woman looking into a black man's eyes. Like I hadn't seen that in sort of media before. So it's just white is sort of the default and ideal, and they have all these rich complex stories, and then whereas black men and black women are usually one or two tropes.
Yeah, I think of like the Basketball Diaries or the
Stuff
woman
like
and the man. Like basketball's also against
exactly.
stereotypical.
Huh. So how do we navigate around this? Like, what have you been thinking about in terms of how you can improve your dating? Because there's nothing, we can't change other people,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
so what is it you can change about how you're dating that can make this experience better?
Yeah, so I really try to have conversations about race with anyone I'm sort of like dating seriously. So especially like when that guy was like, it's not a fetish. Like I actually made a point to say, no, that like is a fetish and this is what a fetish is. I can't change people. Like I used to be bitter about all of this, but like that's not
There's no
productive.
point.
There's no. So me just like engaging in conversations when someone says something that's slightly off, not to make a big deal about it, but just say, hey, by the way, like that's not that cool.
That's a really great way to like approach it too, because I've been in those situations and it hasn't actually even been like myself per se. It was like with another white female, and she was made a really off-colored comment about like gay men, and like it was like one of those moments that I was like, I should say something, but you didn't know how far you should step it, especially with someone you don't know well. But I think that really is the only way to like help educate people, and you don't have to do it in like a why would you say that? But it's hey, like actually, like those types of comments like aren't okay anymore.
They're not okay.
Yeah, no, so this isn't the context of another gay man, but it was actually one of my coworkers. We were at like a work retreat, and I don't remember how the conversation started, but she was describing her ideal man, and one of the characteristics was white. And I kind of winced a little bit, and she's like, what? And I was like, well, you're kind of feeding into white supremacy when you say that. And then we had, not too long of a conversation, but like a conversation. She was very uncomfortable, but I think that's, she'll think about it next time she starts listing all those characteristics. She might, think twice about saying white.
It's one of those things, because I know it's like, it's been a debate. It's like, oh, like if I say this point of view, like, are they even gonna like listen? Because they obviously think about, I think this one, the one she said, I think that actually probably would stick, because it was like, it felt like it was very subconscious that she was even saying it.
Exactly.
But I think like the example I gave, like that girl was blatantly saying something offensive. Yeah. That's what's like conflicted with me. I'm like, is it even worth my time saying something? Is like, can I change someone's opinion? But I think in retrospect, if this was to happen again, I would absolutely say something, because it's like, that is the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
I feel like people are confused because there is a level of sensitivity that keeps increasing with everything we're saying now. I mean, I feel like I can't say anything anymore without offending someone, right?
Yeah.
So there was like that big debate back a couple years ago where at like restaurants, if they were identifying tables and they would say, oh, that's a table with the Black people, that's a table with the Asians. And this was exposed and all of a sudden that wasn't okay, right? But then at the same time, isn't it easier to identify people when you're running a business? You're just like, need a quick identifier. Isn't it easier to just identify people by race? But when you're expressing preferences, why is it offensive to say my preference is a certain race? Not only are you offending all the people who aren't that race, but you're also offending all the people who are in that race because you're putting them all in one category. So it's kind of like that generalization and stereotyping that's offensive. So it's like, where do you draw the line, right? So to you, Chris, where do you draw the line? Where do you say, it's okay that they put that in their profile, or that's where I draw the line.
Yeah. The line is always fuzzy, and I feel like it is moving sort of every day. But as far as it comes to dating and preferences, how I approach sort of my profiles and everything, and how I would love for everyone else to do, is talk about personal characteristics that are not attached to any sort of marginalized group. So like, I like guys who are athletic and funny. Like, that's all great once you start saying, and white. Like, that's, And I like to sort of differentiate between sort of like personal racism and systemic racism. And a lot of people will just say an offhand comment like that and say, like, I didn't mean anything by it, but that also feeds into this larger system. That's what I have the issue with, and that's why we all have to change our behavior one by one.
I just feel like our grandkids who are going to be listening to this episode like 20, 30 years or from now, they're going to be like, what the heck? Because by then everyone's mixed.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, everyone's
we're all the
pretty
same
much
color.
tinted, a little bit tan, a little bit brown.
Amazing.
And it's just nobody's going to be talking about race anymore. I can't wait for us to get to that day.
As far as we still need to go, which we definitely do if you're getting comments like this, like clearly we're not there yet. But I will say, if we look at like our parents' generation, it was like so much worse. Like, people just weren't even conversing. Like, my parents, like, I was raised Jewish, like they only would date or socialize or talk to other Jews. Like, it's come a long way. Like, the fact that there is interracial dating, the fact that we are having open conversations actually is a lot more than where we were.
That's true. Yeah, we've made progress. We can still keep making progress. And the only way to do that is to call people out, right? I think the people who are open to change are open to these comments as well, or feedback. Feedback is a good word. Giving you some feedback.
Also, if they don't react, if they do fight you, or like, they're like, no, I am right. Like, that is their opinion. But I think what you said, like, hopefully later on as they're talking again, or like they're thinking it over later on in the day, it will like remember, okay, like, let me at least give this some thought, and should this be my thought pattern or not?
Absolutely. So what are you looking for, Chris?
It's time to take a quick break so we can tell you about our current sponsor, ModCloth. I've been on a shopping spree at ModCloth lately because I'm in full spring mode. Recently, I just got the Sincerely Yours V-neck blouse in a gorgeous yellow color. It drapes so nicely, and I get so many compliments on it. At ModCloth, there's no such thing as an ordinary outfit. Crafted by a team of in-house designers, ModCloth's signature styles include hand-drawn prints, standout silhouettes, an inclusive size range that celebrates all women, with their sizes ranging from 00 to size 28. Got a question about fit? Their team of mod stylists can hook you up with complimentary sizing and styling help. So what are you waiting for? Hit the site and discover something that's uniquely you. Special for Dateable listeners, get 15% off your purchase of $100 or more. Just go to modcloth.com, that's spelled MODCLOTH.com, and enter the code DATEABLE at checkout. This offer is valid for one-time use only and expires August 3rd. So get on it now. Again, go to modcloth.com and enter the code DATEABLE, DATEABLE, at checkout to get 15% off your purchase of $100 or more. And now, back to the show.
So what are you looking for, Chris? Are you looking for a long-term serious relationship, monogamy?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like some Grindr action.
Yeah, sort of, initially I was looking for sort of a long-term relationship. I was approaching every interaction like a potential long relationship. That wasn't working out.
So naive.
Yeah. So, I more have the opinion now of just like interacting with people and seeing where they're at and what they want, and just being open to a whole sort of range of things. As a single person, you know, every once in a while I go on Grindr for a hookup because, you know,
That's what you do.
yeah,
You got your
yeah,
needs.
exactly, yeah. And then, you know, I'll go on like dates with other people that, you know, maybe it looks like a more long-term thing that may or may not work out. Yeah, so I'm looking for a range of things depending on, you know, where the other person is.
So you're pretty open to
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
You're
Mhm.
looking for a connection of some sort.
Exactly, yeah.
So what are some of the struggles you have now? Where are you finding people to date?
Yeah, I'm mostly like, again, using the apps just because I feel like that's the easiest way to meet people nowadays. There's such a like a small amount of people that we actually meet in our everyday lives. Yeah, as far as trouble, I don't think I get that many matches on like dating apps. I do use stuff other than Grindr. So like I'm on Tinder and OkCupid and things like that. For a while, OkCupid was doing all this really cool research where they looked at like response rates of people's of different races. And of course, you know, black men got fewer responses than white men.
That's
and,
interesting though, because I think like I know we spoke with the 2 black women that were on the show before, and like it is a known fact that black women are at the same level as Asian men when it comes to dating apps, right? Like what is it, like least response rate? But I think at least my perception of black men was not the same.
Yeah.
Because I think there's something in society that's almost like elevated black men, like some of the stereotypes you were talking about before, like the strong, like
Once
good
you go
looking.
black.
Once you go
exactly.
black, you never go back stereotypes. Like there's a lot of like this like good looking stereotype, right?
Yeah.
So
But it's also a fetish, right?
It's a fetishization, and then also like I don't ascribe to that. I'm not super aggressive. I'm like, you know, I go to the gym, but just for like looks. Like, I'm not
so
particularly.
you're basically saying because of this stereotype, where like white people, for example, don't have like they don't have like one stereotype as much. You're saying basically because you don't fit this stereotype that's on movies and TV shows, then you're not seeing like that response rate.
Yeah, I had a first date where the white guy, like, you know, we matched, we talked on Tinder, we met up, and he's like, yeah, you were a little more whitewashed than I, you know, would have thought. And I was like, which, I mean, I'm not, you know, fitting those stereotypes. And I don't really pretend to, but I think, you know, they look at my picture, like if I have like a shirtless pic or something, and they expect
they want
you know,
like a
something.
caricature.
Exactly.
Which
yeah.
is so
and I'm not,
interesting
it's
though.
So
because
interesting.
white people, like if you look at like celebrities, like white celebrities, I'm thinking of like Brad Pitt, Matthew McConaughey. No white guys actually look like them either.
Oh,
But
hell no.
Yeah,
for whatever reason, they're not like, oh, you didn't fit my like thought. Like, why is
you
it
don't look
different?
like Chris
for,
Hemsworth, but
right? Like, why is it different for black men?
Because it's still the majority. You're still surrounded by white people all the time. So you know there's various shapes and sizes of white people.
And in media too. They portray all those various shapes and sizes. And then
absolutely.
as far as with minorities, there's these certain tropes. And we are getting, you know, further past that. There are a lot we're making progress, but I think still generally like white people are allowed to have like unique interests and likes and everything, and black people are you use their color as as the main characteristic.
They like basketball and hip hop.
Yeah, exactly. Which I love hip hop. I do not like basketball.
What about your own community? Like black gay men. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Is there any pushback or any challenges you face as well that's kind of beyond this whole dating thing?
Yeah. So there's definitely black gay men are such a small group that a lot of those intergroup dynamics, I feel like, just as a factor of like we have to like travel pretty far to find each other. But far
it's like Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly. Pokemon Go. Yeah. But as far as like other gay black men, there's a certain school of thought that actually, because of all these sort of reasons, that we should not be dating white men. Same gender loving men is sort of a term. They don't even want to use the term gay because the word gay has gotten too just like associated with a certain white like stereotype. So yeah, there's a group of people who like, you know, I'll go on a date with a white guy, and then they're like, we're going on dates with white guys. Like, do you hate yourself? And like, so yeah, there's some of that. And then also think there are a lot of sort of people like me who are just like, we're rare. We just, you know, find love where we can find it. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely do get some pushback.
So I was talking to some of my really good gay friends in New York about this topic, about race. And they said this observation to me, and I haven't validated yet, but they said you see less interracial gay couples than you do straight couples. There's a lot less intermixing of races.
Yeah, I don't have any statistics, but I would definitely agree agree with that sort of characterization.
Even though you said earlier that it's kind of like because you're already in a smaller group, you're gonna like expand as many people as you
think
can.
you want to explore more.
Yeah. Well, I guess when you're white, you just sort of have the most options, and that's sort of what you go for. Like when people say interracial in the gay community, oftentimes they're saying white with a person of color.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
that's what. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So like a Latino man and a black man, like some people won't even register as an interracial relationship.
You know what? That's true.
Yeah.
If you think about it, the baseline is white mixing with
Yeah.
something
It really
else. And it
is.
right?
which
Yeah.
is- no, but if it was like Asian and black, you would think interracial.
But I don't know if that's the first thing that's
Yeah,
the
you
first
think
label
of. Yeah,
you
yeah,
go
yeah.
to.
Yeah.
You just be like Blasian.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, exactly.
that's interracial,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you just like have another word for that.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
there is no other word for white mix.
Should we make one?
Blasian just rolls
Yeah.
off the
Blasian
tongue so
sounds
well.
so good.
Yeah.
White just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Whack couple.
Yeah.
There we go. We got one.
Okay.
What
I
a
guess.
whack.
That works. I haven't seen a whack
Means
couple
so
in a while.
many things.
I mean, the topic of race is always just so interesting because there's always the external factors, but then there's all these internal factors, like what you struggle with in terms of identity, preference, something that like I can definitely feel as well. I mean, even in like the Chinese female community, you have like different groups. You have like the girls who only date white guys, right? And then you have the group that only dates Asian guys. And then you have the group that's like looks down on both groups. You know? So there's just like so much judgment from our own people as well. It's weird that it translates into dating so much. Like dating is about finding love. It should be happy. It should be like positive. Why are we putting so much like discrimination and negativity to it?
No, I think attraction is just one of those. It's a topic that's so hairy and sort of like something that no one like ever interrogates. I don't want to put out the idea that people are intentionally being racist. I think they're just like not thinking about their sort of natural predilections that have been influenced by the society.
It's not like it's the same situation, but if like women, for example, are like, I only like 6 foot tall guys in the 5 and under, like that is discriminatory to those men. It's just not race, but it's still like unfair because it's something they can't change, like your race, right?
But what about also just men who are bisexual and say, my preference is men. I date both, but my preference is men. Can you really argue that?
No.
Either?
Nope.
You can't. 'Cause
Yeah.
That's what, and that's a lot of people in that
That
group.
actually, out of like all those examples, is probably the one that you can least argue.
Right?
Like
And
height, you could be like, really?
But
Or, like, race, you
nobody's
could be
mad
like,
about
really?
that.
Yeah.
Nobody's mad about gender.
Yeah, I feel like gender has been put into a different silo. Attraction to a certain gender seems more innate to people, seems more sort of, people joke all the time. It's like gay men are sexist because they don't like women. And like, I guess. Like, but.
And it's not personal. I think that's what it is. Because like if you like talk about like height or like race, that's like a characteristic about you. Where like, I mean, yes, gender is too, but it's like so broad that it's not like, or a sexual preference isn't really you. That's their preference. But I guess you could argue that it could be their preference
it
with.
could be as well. Yeah.
Like, only pansexuals are like, you know, the good ones here. All the rest of us discriminate. So
I guess everyone discriminates in some way, but some are more socially acceptable than others.
I mean, isn't that the truth, though? Let's just be honest.
That's
here,
the truth.
right?
Yeah, that's
we
the-
all have these
Yeah.
discriminations that are innate in us.
Yeah.
Some of us have to unlearn them or try to figure out a way to get past them.
Yep.
But it stems from our childhood. It stems
Yep.
from the media. It stems from what we've been taught.
I think some of it too isn't just necessarily what you feel, but like I was talking about earlier, like our parents' generation was way more closed-minded than us. Like I think there's some of that that's seeped in. That's like from an early age, this is who you should be with, or like this is what a couple looks like, or like all of that. That's like kind of taught to you subconsciously. So it may not be that like, oh, I'm actually not attracted to Indian men or Asian men. It just might be like I've kind of like brainwashed that like that isn't who I'm attracted to. I'm not saying me personally. That's
Right,
hypothetically.
No, it's I was raised in I'm a first generation American, so I was raised in a Caribbean immigrant household, and there was a certain religion, Seventh-day Adventism, and I was always told you need to date someone from the Caribbean in that religion because, other cultures, like, cultural problems, you don't mix.
Yep.
Well, it was never sort of, said as a malicious thing, but they're like, no, you really need to. But I don't follow any of their advice, obviously. They did say women, too. So, that was always sort of expectation.
Well, I think that's why the next generation actually has a fighting chance.
Yeah.
Because our generation actually sees why that was like not okay.
Yeah.
But that's next generation is fucked because of paradox of choice. They're just going to be attracted to so many different people.
That's true.
They have like no idea what their preferences are anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a buffet of people.
Men, women, everything.
Whatever. Yeah. Whatever.
It seems like a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. So let's talk about some takeaways, from this conversation. Man, these conversations, I feel like they could go on forever because we can talk about race, gender, all of this forever.
Thorny issues. Yeah.
So many. But I guess like one of my biggest takeaways, again, is when you think about your own personal preference when it comes to dating, put them in two different categories. One is like the superficial characteristics, and two is the emotional characteristics, how you want someone to make you feel. And when you start looking for a partner for your lifetime or even for tonight, think about like, what are the characteristics? Which bucket do I want to pull from?
Yep.
If it's just purely for a one night stand, all right, fine. Go from your superficial bucket, right? You're never going to see this fool again. Mm-hmm. Why not? But if you're looking for something serious, and this is where people blur the two, is when they're looking for something serious, they start with the superficial characteristics, thinking that the emotional characteristics will follow. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. You have to start from the emotional bucket, and then you become attracted to certain characteristics. I always say we have a type because we've only dated certain people. So that's like what you know.
Exactly.
But what about all the characteristics you haven't dated? You have no idea if you like someone who's like 5'2", right? You don't know,
right?
Because you haven't dated that person.
I think my takeaway is like everyone at the end of the day is a human being. Like I think anytime we try to put a blanket over someone, like one, it's just not like a socially great thing to do, right? But then also it's kind of like you almost feel like you like know who this person is before you actually meet them. So that person isn't who this person has visualized from media or from whatever stereotype they have, then it falls short. Even if it's not race, that's like not a really great way to go into dating, to have a feeling about someone that really has no basis because you've never met the person.
Exactly. The other takeaway I have is I love hearing stories from other groups that I don't identify with, because now I'm starting to see that everyone has very similar struggles. Before talking to you, I would have thought gay Black men had it pretty good.
Same.
That would have been what I assumed, right? Yeah. Like that's what the perception I have. Like there's already like this elevated idea of a Black man, and then you have more of these men who want you. I just thought you would have it pretty good. And so I'm not saying it's great to hear these struggles, Chris, but it's also, it is good because now we can start, it's not so much about like, oh, I can be in your shoes, but it's about empathizing. I can feel empathy for other people's struggles.
And I think sometimes too, it's like, I think part of it is like there is that like BBC reference, right? Like it's out there. But you would think like a guy that isn't big, right, would be like, oh, that's a compliment. Like, why are they like upset? Why are people upset about that? But then at the end of the day, I think it comes down to like anytime you are called out for a characteristic that again may or may not be true for you based on like a stereotype, like that doesn't sit well. And especially if that's the only reason it feels like someone is talking to you.
Yeah. If it's not based on your personality or your own unique characteristics, it's just purely based on your skin color alone, that's just not a good way of complimenting someone, right? We talked about this on the other episode too. If someone comes up to you and says, what did that guy say? I can't even come.
Made a chalk. Oh, I can't even come without a Black guy in the room.
That is not a compliment.
Yeah, nope.
The Black man in the room could have one eye and like and like
as long as
7
it's a Black
toes,
man.
right? You're putting me in the same category as him. Oh hell,
right. And I think it's like even like the Greek goddess one. It's like, or Greek god.
I could be a goddess.
It's like it should be a compliment, but because you're like calling out the race, it like just doesn't sit well.
Exactly. I still remember I had a one night stand with someone in New York, and the next day he texted and said, "I can't stop thinking about your beautiful Chinese pussy." And I was like, holy shit. shit. I'm gonna cut off your wiener. I thought that was like the most romantic thing he could say to me.
Right, you're like, you could say anything else. Anything else.
Yeah, and when I say one night stand, because I made it a one night stand, that fucker was never gonna see me again. Not good. Not good. Any other thoughts for us, Chris? Any other like takeaways?
Yeah, takeaways. I think you guys summed it up pretty well. And I would just say, both on my end and on other people's ends, I wish as people dating, we just treat each other as individuals and not members of groups.
Yep. The only way to do that is to continue to have open conversations. I think for years, like in our parents' generation, and even like as of not that long ago, like people just didn't want to state the obvious.
Yeah.
Like they didn't want to like bring it up. And it's like, okay, like if there's an elephant in the room, like you gotta just address it. Like you can't just like pretend it doesn't exist. That's like worse in a way.
Yeah.
If I say something offensive, for example, if I say something offensive on this podcast, I would love it if someone wrote to me and said, Yue, you said this, it was offensive because of this.
Yeah.
I want to hear the explanation. I'm great with criticism and feedback as long as I know where it comes from. Anybody can be ignorant. We just need to know the basis of it.
Right.
And then we know to change our behavior.
Right.
It's only when we call out people for saying something offensive by getting mad at them, by calling them names or showing our anger, it's counterproductive.
Right.
So we just have to explain why certain things are offensive.
Yeah.
I don't remember actually who coined this term, but I actually like it. Instead of calling people out, you should be calling people in.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
You should really, say that was wrong and this is why. And this is like, not have it as an attack on that other person, not just calling them out, but calling them into a discussion with you so you both can learn.
And in a way, you're pulling them into a circle of trust here. Yeah. Like, I'm going to give you some knowledge. Now you're part of this circle that knows this knowledge. I like that. Calling people in.
And that's, again, opening the conversation up. Really the only way. If you just yell at them, then that's not opening a conversation.
It doesn't work. But Chris, have you thought about like being a little open to your preferences?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll definitely make more of an effort.
Okay.
To spread a wide net.
Okay. Speaking of a wide net, our wide net of listeners. If you'd like to meet Chris, we would love to introduce you.
Yeah.
Let's just say he has no preferences at this point, right? Let's just keep it super open. Yeah. Maybe it'll be a blind date. Wouldn't that be fun?
Sure.
Maybe it'll be a blind date. Maybe we'll think of something fun for you guys to do. If you want to be set up, let us know. And maybe you two come back on our show and give us a little like lowdown.
And
lowdown.
If you are a straight Black man, have a different opinion or kind of just story that you would like to share, please reach out. Or any other races we have not talked to yet. We definitely want to keep this conversation going. I know we've just hit the surface. I think Yulitsa wrote to us on Twitter being like, hey, we need to talk about Black women. So we did it. And now if there's other races that want to be heard and want to talk, let us know. Hit us up on Twitter, email, whatever.
And when we say other races, we also mean white people.
Yeah.
I want to hear from a white person who's been fetishized. I want to know what that experience feels like. We want to hear from you guys too. We don't want to single anybody out either. So, okay, if you would like to be a guest on our show, we are still booking guests for future seasons. So just reach out to us at dateablepodcast.com.
Or a white guy that's been discriminated.
Ooh.
Especially now. White men are definitely in a place at the moment.
That would be good. Okay, yeah, any of that. We love to hear from you. Okay, let's wrap this up.
Stay dateable.
Your action item for this week is to confront the conversations where you feel offended, hurt, or uneasy. Instead of calling people out, take Chris's advice and call them in. Speak from your point of view of why what is being said offends you. Don't be afraid to challenge the conversation in a way that is inclusive and educational. Want to continue the conversation? First, tag us in any post with hashtag StayDateable. Then head on over to our website, DATEABLEpodcast.com. There you'll find all the episodes, as well as articles, videos, and our coaching services with vetted industry experts. You can also find our premium Why series, where we dissect, analyze, and offer solutions to some of the most common dating conundrums. To connect with us, find Dateable Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're also downloadable on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcast platforms. Your feedback is valuable to us, so don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes. And most importantly, remember to stay dateable.